are you? Good. That's who I am. I'm a human being, just like you. And I thought that after a great performance like that, which Miwa did, I think it's so transformational. The last thing you want to see is PowerPoint-looking slides. So these slides were done by my daughter about 10 years ago when she was 8. She doesn't do those slides anymore for me. She's barely listening to me. But I am the Chief Innovation Officer and the Senior Vice President at Cambia Health Solutions, which is based in Portland. But most of the conversation I hope I have with you is around how to transform businesses and what is the change in the way in which we transform businesses. Prior to working at Cambia, I was tortured by this idea that businesses were not functioning with the right tenants, and I successfully enjoyed the company of several businesses, large, and then also had 3 startups. And all of it felt kind of off, like a part of your soul was going away every time you do work. And I was wondering what it is that was missing. And I hope to share with you some of the research I've done in the last, prior to the 10 years I have had at Cambia, 10 years prior to that, and it still lives true to me, and I hope it resonates with you as well. We live in a world that's completely filled with unknowns. My daughter, at that time, when she was 10 years old, was sitting in the back of my car, and I was driving down Highway 26 in Portland. And, on the right of Highway 26 is a beautiful forest. It's the Washington Forest, and park, that is. And I noticed she was staring out of the trees, and I thought it was a moment of spiritual conversation I could have with my daughter. And I said, "What are you thinking?" And she said, "Oh, Dad, the trees are talking to me." Again, a spiritual moment I could enter, and I said, "Oh, what are they saying?" And she said, "I don't know, they're all talking at the same time." And it reminds me of exactly what were happening to us now. It's these unknowns that keep coming every day. And even worse, unknown unknowns, the things you don't anticipate at all. Who would have predicted a Tunisian fruit seller lighting himself on fire to start the Arab Spring? Who would have ever even predicted or understood that? Who would have predicted the transformation in 2007 when we had a financial crisis where the term unknown was used by a then Minister of Finance in Singapore, declaring at the World Economic Forum that there are unknowns and that we should watch for them, while he took the entire savings of Singapore and moved it to safer ground while we just spent down our stock to of no value. But he could see something that others couldn't. By the way, he was my classmate in high school in Singapore. Who can predict the Kardashians? To me, that is a research project by itself because they continue to do nothing and make an enormous amount of money. I don't think that the unknown unknowns have to be separated from the serious to the comedic, but I can tell you that all of them have a sense of humor. I've just listed a couple that I thought would be helpful for you. Crazy rich Asians. Did you predict that? I should have. I live in Singapore. I was a crazy poor Asian. And my buddy who went to the University of Oregon with me at 17 was a photographer who took finance. His dad told him he had to go to a finance school. I coached him when he was 17 years old, that right here in the U of O, and now he's the chief photographer for all of this movie. And he's showing me scenes that I wish I was part of. And I thought I was successful. These companies, you remember them. From the years 2007 to 2010, a number of these companies existed. There were 401ks, there was companies that had structure, there was future, there was conversations happening in the business. They all disappeared. They literally disappeared. And they continue, a number of companies continue to disappear. So the foundations of business that are supposed to help society and enable society are crumbling even today. The Fortune 100 today will not be the Fortune 100 tomorrow. So what is it we're talking about here? What is going on in these companies? Yet, while all this is falling apart, a structural change is happening. We think the world is cyclic. We think what goes up comes down. My stockbroker is still telling me that my stocks I purchased 10 years ago will come up. And I'm waiting. It's been 10 years. I have such optimism about life that I think that stock will turn around. In fact, I should buy more of it as it's falling down. But certain structural changes happen where the market for structural change in the past used to be 20%. We could rely on tomorrow to be like today. We could regress forward. And we could say what is tomorrow will be what is today personified greater. Not anymore, because the foundational elements of our business and our life is changing so dramatically at a structural level. Now it's 20% cyclic, 80% structural change. So what happens when you are serving businesses or living a life and living business? I searched through my own heart and did an enormous amount of research to write my third book, but it was a struggle because I couldn't get it right until I discovered one small idea, that the way businesses feel and think is a function of the way employees in that business feel and think. That the connection between business transformation and human transformation has not been understood. That we rely on human transformation at a personal level, and we rely on business transformation at a rational business level, shall I say. And that the connection between the two is only founded not in the way we learn business school stuff, but founded in the way we look at social reform. In the ways of Gandhi, in the ways of Mother Teresa, in the ways of Nelson Mandela, where reform starts bottom up and transformation begins there versus top down, which is how we look at businesses, which is fundamentally the fulcrum of my conversation with you. So these businesses exist today and continue to exist. They have a sense about them. They believe in themselves as much as they believe in what they're trying to transform. They have a sense about them because they have a purpose greater than themselves. They're fundamentally designed for service outside of themselves. Les Schwab is right here in Primeville, right? They moved, but they were here in Primeville. Les Schwab was 7 years old when he lost his parents. He was raised by his uncle who said, you got to do a paper route. If you don't do the paper route, you don't get food. He learned at that age that he had to build a business even when he was living, that he had to pay for every step. And that philosophy drove his entire business model of finding people who were struggling with work, giving them jobs to sell tires to people who want to buy tires. How many of you have been in Les Schwab? Right. What is the first thing? I'm not supposed to ask any questions because you don't have microphones, but I will answer the question myself. Shall I just ask the question and then sort of bring it in? It's just do a seance. I sat in Les Schwab and ate the stupid popcorn and watched that ridiculous shows for almost 30 hours. You can imagine what that feels like. But in those times, I watched grandmas walking in with a flat tire. I watched the Les Schwab attendant grab their keys, and before they even get into the Les Schwab location, throw them out of the car and drive the car away, and this lady is sitting there eating popcorn, watching TV like with me, and then right after that, the man turns up, it's usually a man, but we'll change that, turns up and says, you know, your tire's fixed. And what does she say? Audience participation. How much do I owe you? And what does he say? Exactly. That's a brand. But it starts not as a brand exercise. It starts as a human service. It started with Les Schwab, who wanted to serve people a particular way, not with a marketing agency as, you know what, being authentic is a good idea. We ought to borrow that, right? Which is what we all end up becoming. We become caricatures of ourselves, right? Rather than being ourselves. And what I'm trying to say is the fundamental root of the way business ought to change is the way making people happy, giving people beef at a time I don't understand, but it works. Can you imagine that business plan you present? I've got this idea. You're talking to a big company. Look, we sell tires, but I think we ought to sell beef along the same time. Give it away for free because people will come by the dozens. It doesn't make sense. And yet, what is the sense in it? He can give away beef because they personify that beef to mean the gift of his service to you. He is transacting in trust, not in tires. These are companies I thought you'd take a look at with me, and I studied them. I didn't drink coffee because I don't drink coffee, but I sat in Starbucks for hours and hours and watched how people walked in and said things I don't understand. They were barking like dogs, and people were serving them, and they wouldn't give them unless they called out their name. They were enjoying that. Their name was called out. They were running to the counter, grabbing $6 worth of drinks twice a day, injecting, and then leaving for a sense of community, which they never shared, which is really interesting. That is America personified. I really want to sit. So I tried sitting at other people's tables because we're a community, right? A person like me should not make sudden moves, by the way. And when I tried to sit in other people's tables, they were annoyed. Why were they annoyed? We're one family. We're a community. We're coffee, couch, and community. And unfortunately, it's like, stay away. I've got my coffee and my couch, and I want a community, but I want to borrow it just for a while. There is something there. There's something about. But when I met Howard Schultz and I went to my homage to the king, and I was telling him about how much I was excited about his theories, he looked at me like I had lost my mind, which you are looking at me right now the same way. He said, Mohan, I'm not about all that. I'm about people serving coffee to people. Therein lies the foundational, bottom-up energy that is in Starbucks. And they can stand to lose it, just like Disney can, or Southwest Airlines. Why do you stand in front of a pole like it's Festivus? What are you doing? Notice I said, what are you doing? The previous speaker had 3 different renditions of that. You stand in front of that pole, guarding that pole, because nobody should come there who doesn't belong. You need to protect that pole when you walk into Southwest Airlines, because you are in charge of who goes in that airplane, not the people who are in front. For some reason, that business models all have changed our lives, we don't know. So what are these anchors that are transformational anchors? What I suggest to you is that these companies have noted something that others haven't. They have seen the values of their customers and their future customers transforming. And you may argue that their value may not transform, but there's something that stays while everything changes. There's something that lasts beyond the attributes that you search for as you market and you address companies and the audience that companies serve. That which remains is what I like to talk to you about. That which lasts forever, beyond all the fog and the unknown unknowns that you can plan your business to, or you can help others plan their business to. And so I'd like to share with you 7 principles. I actually had 10, but the publisher said no. They want 7 because of Stephen Covey. You can always thank him for the 7, so I had to shove 2 into 7, and you can figure out which one those are. But the 7 that I believe in, and I have tested it, I'm running this business of $9 billion with these tenants and have for the last 15 years, so I am building this into and have seen successes. So I believe that it is transportable, because I had to write the book and then go into a business and actually prove it before you'd listen to me. If not, I'd be a theory in walking. The principles that I've discovered, and I hate the word discovered because it's always there before I found it, but I discovered it from the perspective of my own realization, was founded in a couple of things. I had the pleasure of writing a first book on leadership, and in that book, I wanted to get people to support me. Well, it was all about Gandhian thinking and how one could use authentic leadership using Gandhi's methods. Well, as luck would have it, Gandhi's first grandson was visiting Portland, and all of my friends and family told me, go over there, sit in the front row like you would sit, attack me, who's Gandhi's grandson, and show the book and see whether he'll endorse it. That's what you do, right, to get a brand launch. You get Gandhi's grandson to say it's okay, you got a TED Talk, right? So I wrote a book on authenticity. Can you imagine how reverse authentic that is? So I go into this hallway, in the hall, and I said, I just can't do this. My family will hate me, but I've got to go to the back where I belong. I'm an introvert. And so I wanted to sit way back there. As I turned to the right and went back, I bumped into Gandhi's grandson. And he looked at me and he said, I'm Raj Mohan Gandhi. Who are you? And I said, I am Mohan Nair. And he said, oh, that's my grandfather's first name. And I said, I know, I was named after him. Humor at the wrong time, just want you to know, not appropriate. He then said, why are you here? And I said, I got this book I wrote, and my family and friends told me I should tackle you. And I told him the whole thing, right? I couldn't do it. I went to the back. And he smiled and he said, let's have dinner. So I'm like, this authentic stuff works. I mean, it really works. And so we had dinner, and I thought I was winning. Score 1, Mohan, Gandhi 0. And so I ended up having dinner with him. But just before dinner, he looked at me and said, Mohan, you're named after my grandfather. What do you do for the world? And I had no answer. But I spoke for 5 minutes. I had no answer, but I spoke for 5 minutes. My brain kept saying stop, my mouth kept going. And at the end of it, he smiled in his usual way and he said, Mohan, save the children, would you? And that's all he said. That was 1993. And it struck me. It made me realize that I wasn't. I wasn't saving anything. I was just doing things and writing my resume, keeping score in my life. So the principles I'd like to share with you are corporate principles that apply to humans as well, because we are a human organization when you're in a corporation, and it gets forgotten. So in the human organization, there is one idea that can change all ideas, just like Gandhi could change the world. There is the value you provide that's within you, that you can change yourself first before you educate others on how to change. That corporations can fix themselves before they fix others. How many corporations have witnessed or been part of where they talk a good story out there and they're really rotten on the inside? You can't function in the long term or in this new economy that way anymore. Those days are over. So those two principles I hope you take into business and say, are you resting on your own ideology? Are you your own example? Are you your own witness? And if you're not, then the failure begins. The second is the purpose of your company. I call it driving without a cause is a fault. If you drive without a purpose greater than yourself, which is what a cause is. We have mission statements in companies. Every company has a mission statement. Half the company doesn't remember what it is, because make money is the mission, and everything else falls aside. But there is a mission. Missions are given. Causes are taken. And when you have a corporation, causes are top-down. They're driven from the top, where you have a mission statement meeting. Some of you actually help them write it, right? And you have yellow stickies on the left and the right, and everybody's happy. And you deliver it to the world, and then you say, thou shalt. And people say, yeah, on Friday maybe. But causes come from within. They reflect on injustices the world has. And individual employees are engaged in cause development every day. In fact, they yearn for it. They're dying for it. Part of them is going away without it. So remember causes. Causes drive a large arc for transformation. And if you don't have a cause, CEOs, when I do my writings, a lot of CEOs write me emails and say, I need a cause. I don't have a cause. I need one. As though you're supposed to buy one in 7-Eleven. Causes come from your organization. They live within it. You have to tap into it to discover. The other thought I'd like to share with you is one on momentum. Everyone wants momentum in their lives. You watch a basketball game, you can see when the game is going and the team that's winning is getting more and more scores. What happens to the competition? They could do a timeout to stop you, right? That's how momentum is stopped, by a timeout, so you break. How do you get momentum? Momentum is like the currents under the ocean. Trends, the things that drive markets that we all do analysis on, are just waves in the ocean. What is the momentum for Starbucks? It is the sense of community people want and deserve and desire, but never want that close to them. That's what the momentum is. What is the momentum, and what is the deepest momentum in Starbucks? Loneliness. It's a sense of community you always desire, but don't know how to transact and win in. It's not coffee. You can get coffee many places. What is the momentum in Disney? Do you know, I just read that people are putting their ashes they're delivering their ashes privately in Disneyland. They're spreading their ashes in Disneyland. Next time you have a rational conversation with somebody, bring that up and see what happens to their face. So when an ice cream cone falls on the ground in Disney World, what happens? What happens when that cone falls from the hands of an anticipatory child? The lady over in the corner said the kid picks it up and eats it. That's really true, but what I was hoping for a response of, which you're not helping me on, is that the staff grab it, throw it away, buy them a new ice cream cone. Because it's about joy. And there's nothing in the way of joy. Momentum is about keeping people happy in Disneyland. In the company I just mentioned, Les Schwab, it's about energizing your trust always. You trust me, I will work within that trust always. That's the momentum. The trend is people want to buy tires, they can buy in many locations. It's a very different attitude. Orders of value. You all know the word value proposition. It's drawn into your head and driven into your minds. Every time someone uses the word value proposition, they mean emotional value and rational value. But explain a Tesla. It is supposed to be eco-friendly, but it takes up shadows bigger than anything else. Priuses. Most Prius drivers don't stop at stop signs. I can show you the research. So there is friendly tree hugging, and they feel like they're tapping into the universe, but their behaviors are very different. And that's fundamentally the dichotomy we live in as we talk about markets and products. But there is one story, beside emotional value and rational value. A previous speaker discussed with you on symbols. There is symbolic value. And why you drive a Prius, or why you engage in wearing the clothing you do, why you eat the foods you eat, have a rational, emotional, and a symbolic value. You're symbolizing something to yourself. And many markets don't understand that and don't miss that. Transforming organizations that transform themselves engage in symbolism all the time. Gandhi made a symbol when he took a salt march in India to free the Indians. That was a symbol. You are acting on a symbolic level. Now, Starbucks, it's coffee, couches, and community, but the symbol that is generating there is a sense of oneness that comes from a sense of common thinking and common engagement, and now a sense of diverse thinking that is being brought into frame. But there's another story that I'd like to share with you that is personal, and I have permission to address this, as an example of how value can be given to anything, and that it's your job as communicators and designers to deliver that kind of value constantly to people, I think. Your mission and your cause. It is the following. I know a boy named Gage. He was 7 years old and 9 years old when he contracted cancer. And in contracting cancer, bone cancer on the spine, his spine had to be reduced in size. He worked for he's the son of one of my teammates who I've worked with for 15 years. When you contract your spine and they have to take pieces of your spine off because of cancer, your organs grow bigger than your body grows. You're suffocating your organs. And so he was slowly dying. I heard this. We all knew it. We were taking care of his family. Some of us gave our vacations away so that he could take care of his kid. He went through several years of this incredible illness, and the family still is around me. So one day, I was on the board of the Big Brother, Big Sister, and we were doing a bowling for kids thing. I invited Gage to meet him because I wanted to make him happy. Gage turns up. I fall to the ground. I don't know why I fell to the ground. I just fell to the ground, looked at his face, and said, "What do you want in all the world?" I was hoping he didn't say Ferrari. And he said, "Root beer." And I looked at his dad and his mom, and they said, "Fine, he can have root beer." So I go to the front of the bowling alley where those people are, and I said, "Here's some money. Please give me a root beer." What did they say? "We don't have any root beer." Yeah, of course, the movie ends badly. And then I said, "Here's $20. If you can get me root beer anywhere, just get me root beer. I'll be happy." Guy runs like Forrest Gump travels all the way, comes back with a nice big, root beer. I give it to this young man. He's sucking into that root beer. His eyes are big. He's happy. I feel like I've touched the heavens. I've given him what he wants, and I made him happy. He's flirting with the young girls. He's bowling. He's actually active. I feel like a moment has passed, but I have at least conquered that moment in my own soul. I come to work the next day. There's a drawing on the table, on my desk, and it's his drawing with me and him with root beer in the bowling alley, saying thank you. I feel great. I see him 3 months later during the festive seasons, Christmas and Hanukkah and such. I see him at Circuit City, just like any tech head like you can think of. Not Circuit City, it was another place, Fry's. And in Fry's, he sees me, I see him, Dad says, "Do you know who this is?" What does he say? Root beer. I fall to the ground, again, being the elder statesman, giving advice to a young dying boy like I own the world, but I'm a fool. And in that exercise, what does he say to me? He leans forward and he says, "You have to give gifts." To my face. And I think it's the season. His dad must have said that to him, or mom, so I'll take it. I said, "Yes, I know, Gage, you have to give gifts." He said, "No, you don't understand. You have to give gifts." And I realized at that point that he was sending me the same message that Gandhi was. That message that says that your work has to be a gift because it is a gift to you as well. That work is what makes you transform. That as you transform for causes greater than yourself, you become a weapon for good. If I may use that word. So I get root beers from all over the world now. People are sending me root beer, and everyone says, "Hey, root beer." I know that the meaning of root beer will change today. I know because you have heart, just like everyone who can't run away from it has heart. That that boy, Gage, is still in my life and continues to be in my life, and his father is 4 doors away from me, and he still talks to me about Gage. That he lives forever, and when I went to his funeral, his father hugged me and said, "He's drinking a root beer in heaven." That's what symbolic value means. It means something that deep. And if you can get that deep without manipulating the world, then maybe, just maybe, the world will change with you. When you get to operational exercise, think about this. Be competent, don't just have capability. Be competent, which means you got the recipe of all the things you need. When you look at leaders, watch them transform and transform with them. Gandhi was a coward. He was not a great speaker until the day he got thrown out of that train. He transformed in 2 weeks. He didn't take an Anthony Robbins course. He transformed. Although I know Anthony Robbins, and it's a good course. But he didn't do that. His molecular structure changed because he saw something greater, and he became an orator. It transformed him. Think of people like Gandhi. This one's my drawing, by the way. It's not my daughter's. Just for the... I can do something. And this right? These are branded people. You look at it, you know who they are. Because they have branded, they have taken money from you to change the world. That's the new model of transformed leaders. The old model is wealth creation with only financial wealth. The new model is wealth creation, emotional wealth, social wealth, and spiritual wealth, dare I say it. Right? Now, the final thing is if you have all of this and you look good on TV, if you don't execute, you're dead. So being able to operationalize all the things I'm sharing with you is what transformative companies, the real transformative companies, and I hope and pray that you can look at them and understand them to a level that you can choose your customers, choose your clients, or fire them as politely as you wish. Right? But authenticity cannot be replaced. It is one that comes from a root of purpose greater than yourself. So the more you forget yourself and you remember the purpose of why you are here, the greater you become a transformed person that can affect a transformed organization. That is my theory that I've been practicing for 15 years in a $9 billion company, and it is successful. It is working. And maybe they don't even know it's working that way. But if you ask everyone in Cambia why they're there, they say it's because of the cause. And they're hired and fired based on it. So, of course, my publisher wants you to buy my book. And notice there were 10 at first, and I put 7 in there because it was 10. I just want to justify that. But realize that the most important thing is I want you to imagine the opportunity. I come here in service of you, in service of the great people at Ben Design. But I wish for you that your dreams are greater than your memories. I will be a memory in a few minutes. But make sure your dreams are greater, because then you never age. Thank you.